According to a 2019 article by the BBC, domestic abuse killers follow an 8-stage pattern. Controlling behavior can be a key indicator of someone who is capable of killing their significant other. Criminology expert Dr. Jane Macton-Smith of the UK has studied this extensively and has laid out the typical stages before a person loses their life to domestic assault. A history of domestic abuse or stalking in previous relationships. The romance develops quickly into a serious relationship. It then becomes dominated by coercive control from the perpetrator. A trigger that threatens the perpetrator's control, such as a breakup or the other person leaves. Escalation. The control intensifies with stalking or threats, and even threats of suicide. The perpetrator has a change of thinking to move on through revenge or homicide. Planning. The perpetrator buys weapons or makes plans to get the victim alone. Homicide. The perpetrator kills the victim and possibly hurts others, such as their children.
I'm Darlene.
And I'm Melody.
This is
Hard Times and True Crimes. Well, we aren't drinking coffee again because, once again, we are recording in the evenings. However, since on Darlene's last episode, she was telling you about her Nespresso machine. Darlene,
Yes.
This is funny. I have a book here in my hand. It's called The Perfect Coffee Book.
Right?
This is from 1978.
Oh, the year I was born.
Okay, this is so cool then. I didn't realize that. But so my sister found this at my mom's. My mom is a bit of a pack rat. Sorry, Mama. And my sister found this and I said, Mama, let me borrow that. I want to look at it for the show.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, it's 1978.
Right.
And it says, there's been a lot of progress made in coffee brewing. In fact, the automatic drip coffee maker is just about the most progressive way to brew a perfect cup of coffee. It's for you as an owner of an automatic drip coffee machine that the makers of Maxwell House brand coffee have specially prepared this booklet. And it's full of like coffee recipes.
That is so cool.
Isn't it?
I love that.
Yeah,
Let
I'm
me
going to take a
see.
picture and put it on the Facebook.
Yes, I love that. That is cool. My grandma drank Maxwell House, so that was the first coffee I ever drank. Was Maxwell House.
And that booklet was from 1978 when you were born. So how cool is that?
Ooh, and they actually have like cappuccino and Swiss coffee and creamy coffee and apple crisp.
I know, and I didn't even know that cappuccino was really a thing back then. But yeah,
I love that.
So that's our coffee talk for you
For today.
Yep.
We need to post one of the recipes in the Facebook group.
I will do that.
Okay.
I'll put that in the Facebook group. That will be awesome.
I had an idea. Let us know if you like it or not. I was thinking from every state that we posted or that we tell a story about, that we will post either a recipe or a coffee drink or something like that. So tell me if you would like that, because I think that's a cool idea. It's something I would like.
Yeah, and if we can't find one and they listen and they're from that state, maybe they could post one.
Yes.
That would be fun.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Okay,
Yes,
so-
absolutely. So please, we need your help.
Yes. And then that goes along with our Buy Me a Coffee. So, of course, if you would like to buy us a coffee, just go to our website and click on the little coffee cup, and you can help support the show.
Absolutely.
Okay. So before we jump into the episode, I also want to tell our listeners, I'm sure everybody knows now, but up in Western North Carolina,
Yes.
they have been hit so hard. We are in Central North Carolina, so it's about 2 hours from us. But our neighbors to the west are suffering.
Yes.
So please keep them in your prayers. I'm sure there are all kinds of links on social media if you want to help donate or give to the help efforts there. But they really need our prayers more than anything.
Absolutely. So Journey's brother is there. He lives there, and they had to go get a wellness check for him and his wife because they could not get a hold of them. It was really scary for them.
So scary.
But thankfully they're good.
Yeah. I've keep hearing more and more stories about it. It's just heartbreaking, really.
It is.
Yeah.
You guys are going to go do some work, aren't you?
We are. We're planning to go in a week or two. My husband, once Tim retires,
Yes.
we're planning to take a few days to go up there, possibly with Samaritan's Purse, and help with some of the cleanup efforts.
That is great.
Our episode today is actually was a suggestion from one of our listeners quite a while back, Stacy Ashworth. Hey, Stacy.
Hello.
She mentioned this episode to me, and so I've been having it in the back of my mind for a while, and I decided to do it now in October because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Yes, it is.
So I thought, well, this would be very fitting for that. Moore County, North Carolina, is home to several noted golf courses in the area of Pinehurst, Southern Pines. It's actually known to regularly host the U.S. Open out there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty wealthy area.
Okay.
It's also so the county seat of Moore County is Carthage, North Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
Where the Pine Lakes Health and Rehab is located.
Okay.
And Carthage, this is like a rural area. Have you been there?
I don't know. Like, it sounds really, I've heard of it, but I don't know if I've been there or not.
And it's a smaller town. It's rural. Their population was around 1,800 people back in the early 2000s when this episode was taking place.
Okay.
They have, they have a bunch of beautiful old homes down their main street.
Oh.
And then their main street has like this traffic circle, and the courthouse is right there in the middle of the traffic circle. It's just really quaint.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, Pine Lakes Health and Rehab. That is an Alzheimer's care center and a nursing home which houses 110 beds. And it actually put Carthage on the map when it was the location of a mass shooting in 2009.
Okay.
Do you remember anything about that?
No, I just remember the email from Stacy and looking like very briefly into it.
Okay, so you know which one I'm...
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, when she mentioned it, I thought, that one did ring a bell for me. My brother actually lived close by Carthage at the time. He lived in Cameron, which is just a few minutes away from Carthage when this all went down in 2009. So on Sunday, March 29th, 2009, at 10 a.m., the Moore County Emergency Services received a frantic 911 call from the Pine Lakes Nursing Home. The caller pleaded for help and an ambulance to be sent right away. They begged, please hurry up, please. Oh gosh, please hurry. Then another call came in and the dispatcher was told, there's a man in here with a double-barrel shotgun shooting people, white man with a beard. The dispatcher then advised the caller to get people to a safe spot, and the caller replied, well, they were doing their best. That's what they were doing. And then a third call came in, but that one was cut short when the operator assured the caller help was already on the way. That help was in the form of a young police officer, 25-year-old Justin Garner, the only officer on duty at the time of the call. When Garner entered the parking lot, he noticed the window of a truck shot out. He realized this was definitely more serious than he had thought in his initial thoughts. A woman came out shouting, there's a man inside with a gun. And at the front door, he saw a lady that was already injured. So Officer Garner began making his way through the building, following the sound of gunshots that he could hear, and checking each room. As he reached the nurse's station, he encountered the gunman in the hallway. Officer Garner noticed that it was now eerily quiet. The gunman was about 35 feet away and reloading his shotgun. Officer Garner commanded him to drop his weapon, but the shooter continued loading. Garner gave the command twice, and then the gunman lifted the gun and pointed it right at him. The two men fired at one another basically at the same time. The officer didn't actually even hear the shot, but he felt something strike his leg. He quickly ducked into a room for cover, but he knew he had to go back out and see what was going on, so he peered around the door and then carefully eased back out into the hallway. And that's when he spotted the gunman lying on the floor with a shotgun dropped beside him. As Garner approached, the gunman was still alive, and he urged him to please just finish him off. Please just kill me, he repeated over and over. Instead, the officer cuffed him, unloaded the shotgun, removed a pistol from the injured man, and waited for backup. During the gunfire exchange, the officer had received 3 shots to the leg, but he had stopped the shooting rampage with just 1 shot from his .40 caliber pistol to the shooter's chest.
Wow.
The next day, at a news conference, the gunman's identity was given as Robert Kenneth Stewart, a 45-year-old Moore County resident, disabled painter, and a National Guard veteran. Authorities informed the public that Stewart's estranged wife, Wanda, was a certified nursing assistant at the nursing home. In the following days, this is what they found out more about Robert Stewart. He was born September 12th, 1963, and he married Wanda Gay Neal in 1983 when he was 19 and she was just 17. He had already actually been married once before.
Wow.
Yeah, at 19.
Sheesh.
And that marriage had ended shortly after it began. So at 19, he was on his second marriage. And it was fairly evident to everyone who knew them that they had a rocky marriage at the time. Stewart was known to have these fits of jealousy and rage. And within 3 years, that marriage was over, and they had both moved on to other relationships.
Okay.
Stewart went on to marry a woman named Ellen Susan McCaskill. And they were actually married for 15 years, but then eventually that marriage ended as well. She did say in one interview that he would complain sometimes at like the way she did things, telling her, well, that's not the way Wanda did it.
Oh, gracious.
Yeah, and then she would reply, well, I ain't Wanda.
Yeah.
So she did know, well, he hasn't quite gotten over her.
Mm-hmm.
And Wanda had gone on to remarry a couple of times, and she had 3 children now.
Okay.
When her consequent marriages ended in divorce, she eventually reconnected with Robert Stewart in 2002, and the couple struck back up with their relationship and remarried.
Oh, my goodness. So after all that time.
Yeah, and 3 kids later on her part.
Sheesh.
Now, from all accounts of those who knew them best, the second time around with their relationship wasn't really much better than the first. Although Stewart had said, you know, he had changed and he's going to stop drinking and he was going to treat her better, that just wasn't the case.
It never is.
Nope. And it was a rocky marriage at best. Robert, called Pee Wee by his friends due to his 6'2" and 300-pound frame, he was known to have violent outbursts, especially if he had been drinking liquor. And at that size, I imagine he could probably be pretty scary when agitated.
I'm sure.
They said he would yell and throw tantrums. Wanda's son Derek was in the 5th grade when the couple reunited, and things were so turbulent during that time that he actually went to live with his grandparents to get out of the home.
That is sad.
That is sad. Robert was controlling, and most recently, he had been angry about the time Wanda was spending at church. She had tried to curtail her attendance somewhat to like appease him, and she finally just gave up on that. And things came to a head when he pointed a gun to her head and threatened to kill her. After that, she couldn't take it anymore, and so she moved back home with her parents, Melvin and Margaret Neal.
Okay. Smart lady. Well, she married him twice, but
yeah.
I mean, I guess we all make mistakes.
Wanda's mother told investigators that she believed Robert was at that nursing home that day for only one reason, and that was to kill her daughter. He had been acting oddly since Wanda had left him, and it had been maybe 3 to 4 weeks prior. He would call her parents home relentlessly, begging her to take him back. And when that didn't work, he would try other tactics, claiming he had cancer.
Oh, gosh.
Now, he may actually have had prostate cancer, I think.
Okay.
But, just trying to get any pity or whatever. And so finally, they would just started taking the phone off the hook to avoid the calls. So when he couldn't get through to their house, he began calling their neighbor's house. And I'm talking like at 2 and 3 in the morning.
Oh, I bet they love that.
Can you imagine that? I mean, like, goodness. And he would tell them, well, I've got an emergency and I need Wanda and her parents to come to my house.
Mm.
And her parents, they were like, no, they wouldn't go. Wanda's mother said, like, there's no way she was going to go over there because she knew something was up and she didn't trust him. So on the Sunday morning of the shooting, most people were either at church already or getting ready for church because, again, this is a small community located in the Bible Belt. But Wanda had to work that day at the nursing home, And when she arrived, she learned that instead of working her normal hall, she was going to be working on the Alzheimer's floor that day. And that ward has a special door lock to prevent the Alzheimer's patients from wandering off.
Yeah.
So just before 10 a.m., witnesses saw Stewart arrive at the facility with multiple firearms, one attached to the roof of his Jeep. While in the parking lot, he stopped at Wanda's car and emptied 2 magazines from a .22 rifle into it before proceeding inside.
Wow.
Around the same time that Stewart arrived, another visitor was getting there that day, Michael Cotton, and he was on his way in to see his aunt. He was fixing to enter the building, and Stewart shot at his vehicle before his car came to a complete stop. Cotton was hit in the shoulder. Fearing for his life, he waited for like a pause between shots, and he just like made a run for it and ducked into the building as quick as he could get in. And he gave the warning that there was a shooter on the loose outside. He took cover in an interior hallway bathroom with several other people, closing like both of the interior doors.
Okay.
And they were just praying that, the gunman wouldn't find them. So he was one of the callers to 911.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure he was the one who called and described the shooter and said, hey, it's a white man with a beard and all of that.
Okay.
Even as they hid inside the bathroom, Cotton and the others could still hear the chaos going on just outside the door. When the staff had been warned of the heavily armed man, there was a nurse named Jerry Avent who took action. He instantly called for a lockdown, but it was just too late. He was there. Stewart barged in, and he was firing as he went, and he hit the nurse, Jerry Avent, with one of those shots before he continued on. Jerry's fiancée, Jill DeGarmo, she was a medical tech at the facility, and so she rushed to his side, and he was telling her over and over that, he was dying. He knew he wasn't going to make it. I know. So tragic.
So was he just shooting at everybody in his path, or
yes,
just, okay.
randomly,
Okay.
just at anybody. Jerry's fiance, she was trying to assure him, no, you're not going to die. You're going to survive, because she said she couldn't fathom any other option. She couldn't even give herself the permission to even consider any other alternative. Meanwhile, those who could take cover were hiding wherever they could. But, some of those residents, they can't.
Right.
These are elderly people.
Oh, my goodness.
Some residents hid in their showers. Sadly, like I said, many of them were too old or too frail to walk. So they were just basically sitting ducks.
And he just walked by shooting them?
Yep. He was looking for Wanda, and he didn't know she was on the Alzheimer's floor that day. And he didn't care. He was just looking for her, and as he went and shooting people as he went by.
What an evil person.
Yeah, it's horrible. When Wanda heard there was a shooter in the building, she knew immediately that it was Robert. She hid in a bathroom, that locked hallway. When the 911 dispatcher put out that call to officers that morning, only one officer was on duty, and that was Officer Justin Garner that I told you about.
Yeah.
He was a 4-year veteran of the force, and he was actually filling in for one of their rookie officers who had other plans that day. And he was just 2 miles away when that call came in. So he arrived at the facility pretty quickly. And as soon as he realized how serious this was, without any thought of, saving his own life or any risk to himself, he entered the building with just one thought, and that was to stop that gunman. He did not wait for backup. He did what needed to be done.
Wow.
All of his training kicked in, and he had that shooter cuffed within minutes. As a matter of fact, he had gotten that call at 10 a.m., and the shooter was cuffed by 10:04.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. What a hero. 4 minutes.
That is incredible.
Yeah, his actions truly were heroic.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of devastation had taken place in just those 4 minutes.
Right.
7 residents and the nurse had been killed, and 3 others were injured, including that officer. Many of those residents also were blind or deaf.
Oh.
And, they couldn't protect themselves. But you can imagine how much worse that would have been had he not been stopped when he was.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Right.
Because yeah. Mm-mm. He wouldn't have stopped until he got to her, and it would have took a while to get to her.
Right. Because she was on that locked unit.
Right.
Yeah. So when Police Chief Chris McKenzie was getting ready for church that morning, the emergency call had come in. And at first, he thought it was somebody target shooting. I mean, somebody reporting somebody firing shots. That's not uncommon in rural, counties down there. There's a lot of hunters. He didn't really think much of it. He knew he had an officer on duty that was going to go. So he didn't go to the scene straight away. But as soon as he found out that he had an officer that had been shot, he got there quickly after that. And he arrived to find out that officer had single-handedly apprehended the shooter.
Hope he got a raise.
Oh, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute.
Okay.
That was it's some interesting stuff. I don't know if he got a raise, but hopefully he did.
Yes.
But yeah.
Or a promotion.
So later, while still at the nursing home, the medics, when they were dealing with the shooter, they discovered another hidden firearm on Stewart. And so that prompted them to cut all his clothes off, and they said they made him trauma naked.
Right, sure.
I had never heard that term,
No.
but, they found that other firearm hidden, and so they had to be sure there was nothing else, so they had to strip him down. And that
Because he was still alive.
Yeah, he was still alive. So that was all according to some newspaper accounts that I had read. So Robert Stewart, the shooter, was taken to Moore Regional ER. While there, he told one of the nurses that he had taken 6 nerve pills and he didn't really remember anything.
Oh, poo.
And a few weeks later, he ended up being moved to the medical unit at Central Prison in Raleigh.
Of course, he lives, I guess.
Yeah, he did live.
Oh, my gracious.
Now, he was begging to be shot and put out of his misery.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure he wanted to do all the damage he could and then take
Yes.
the easy way out of it all.
So I'm glad he didn't get the easy way
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
He took a bullet, but he didn't get to go out easily.
Right.
Yeah. So many families in this community were affected by this senseless act of violence. But it's during times like these that communities pull together.
Yes.
That's when they do it best.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we're seeing right now with this Hurricane Helene in western North Carolina, the people are pulling together. Well, that's what the community did. Police Chief McKenzie said it best. He said, "It's a small community built on faith, and faith will get us through."
I love that.
So in the days following the horrible tragedy, Officer Garner was, of course, like we said, hailed as a hero. He earned a lot of awards for his service and his selflessness. Actually, before that incident happened, he had earned Officer of the Year award before.
Oh.
Yeah, so
And he's a young guy.
he's 25 years old,
Love that.
which, he's from Robbins.
Okay.
And so I imagine this, good old country boy, he grew up
Yes.
around guns, I'm quite sure.
Yes.
And you know the kind of person, because
Absolutely.
that's who I grew up around, those kind of people.
Yes.
I love that.
I do too.
But suddenly, in this little small town that he lives in, he's like a celebrity. And I think he didn't feel really comfortable with all the attention. But, that everybody wants to say congratulations and
Yes.
they're thankful for what he did.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even Dr. Phil wanted to fly him and his police chief out to
Oh.
Hollywood to tape a segment about him.
That is so cool. Did he go?
They actually turned it down.
Oh.
They didn't want to take away from the horrible losses that those families in the community had experienced.
Okay, I can respect that.
Yeah. But I just thought, it was nationwide news. I
Yeah.
saw articles from all over the U.S.
Wow.
On Saturday, April 4th, 2009, Carthage United Methodist Church held a candlelight service in memory of the 8 victims of the rampage. Wanda Neal's mother, Margaret, tearfully spoke, asking attendees to please not blame her daughter for Stewart's actions. Robert Stewart was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of felonious assault on a law officer, and attempted murder on an officer. At his hearing, upwards of 50 relatives of those victims attended. Stewart's court-appointed attorneys, John McGarrion of McGarrion and Wells from Ashboro, they did not try to deny that Stewart was the gunman. That was pointless.
Sure.
So they took this approach of diminished capacity for his defense, hoping to get some compassion from a jury.
And we have to remember that is their job, but it's
Yes.
frustrating.
By the way, I don't know if you remember hearing that name before, but that's also the same firm that defended Terry Mickey in the Melissa Mickey killings.
Oh, okay.
Yes, McGarry and Wells are very well known in Asheboro.
Okay.
They were appointed to him.
Okay.
Their defense is going for this diminished capacity, and eventually this became nicknamed the Ambien defense in newspaper headlines, because what they would argue is that he was under the influence of alcohol, antidepressants, and sleep aids, the Ambien, and that he did not have an understanding of his actions on that day.
Okay.
My sister sometimes takes Ambien to help her sleep, and she had said once she takes it, she has no recollection of it at all.
Yeah.
So she has to make sure her husband's home so that, like, she doesn't get up and start doing stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, cooking, burn the house down, driving or something. I don't know what you could do, but you do stuff and you don't remember it.
Okay. So are we certain he was taking Ambien that day?
He was. He actually had been taking it for about 2 years, and he had gotten to the point where he was taking up to 12 times the prescribed amount. I feel like maybe they should quit prescribing them because that sounds really dangerous. But you also know of another case where that was a big factor in some horrible deaths that you may eventually tell, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I do want to tell that story,
Okay.
but yes, Ambien possibly played a big role in that.
Which, you know, he told that nurse at the hospital that he had taken 6 nerve pills and he didn't remember anything. So he might not have been lying.
Yeah, he really might not have.
So his lawyers, being the good lawyers they were, or good defense that they were, they wanted to request a change of venue because everybody knew about that.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, you can't blame him for that.
No, but the trial judge rejected that.
Okay.
He did, however, take this like unusual step of having jurors brought in from Stanley County, which was about 60 miles away.
Okay.
So the jurors would be bussed in and out every day of the trial from Albemarle to Carthage. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard of that being done.
No.
The Moore County DA, Maureen Kruger, she asked the judge to order that a bullet that was still in Stewart's body, where the officer shot him, be preserved as evidence if it should be removed. And the defense team, they didn't object to that, but they said they don't want the bullet to be removed unless it's medically necessary. So interesting that this bullet inside of him could be considered evidence and ordered to be kept.
Interesting. Okay.
And the DA also intended to seek the death penalty, which I think is very fitting.
Sure.
Should he be found guilty. But the defense, they were depending on this loophole in a law. If the death penalty got put on the table, there was this loophole in the law in North Carolina that they were hoping would get him out of that. So at the time, North Carolina was one of 2 states with the Racial Justice Act.
Okay.
Now, Stewart is white, but his lawyers contend that Moore County had a history of racial injustice in capital offense cases, and they said their client should not face the death penalty because of that sullied past.
Huh?
Although his race literally had nothing to do with this crime.
Okay. I would have went more for the Ambien defense.
This wasn't so much the defense as it was the loophole. If they put the death penalty on the table, they were going to try to get him out of the death penalty using that.
Okay.
Now, interesting enough, your friend Brooke Medina,
Yes.
you know, she writes for the Civitas.
Yes.
Okay. I remember reading an article from Civitas one time about that very same Racial Justice Act loophole, which was being used in the case for the Vanessa Dixon's killer.
I feel like I have maybe read something about that too then.
Yes.
And with her.
Yes. So again, this was a white man, but there were 4 cases in North Carolina at the same time, I think, as Vanessa's, that they were able to use that loophole to try to get these people off of death row, which is so...
I really hope it didn't work. Well, I know it...
Yeah, we won't tell what happened in that one because we are going to tell that story. Yeah. But in this case, that's what they were going for.
Okay.
And I'm just like, that's ridiculous. How could you be able to use that? Yeah.
That's crazy.
But the judge, he was not even considering whether to allow the death penalty until the perpetrator actually faced trial and received a verdict.
Okay.
So he hadn't even had a verdict yet. So unless they find him guilty, none of that's going to come into play anyway.
Okay.
Now, sometime before that trial began, the DA, Maureen Kruger, she actually ended up removing herself from the case because it was discovered she had once represented the defendant's mother. In 2004, she had defended Mary Frances Stewart when Mary Frances had threatened her son's life.
Oh.
So, I mean, that's kind of just
Rough family.
Kind of gives you this feel. I mean, I don't want to call them names, but like it brings to mind this dysfunctional, rural dysfunctional family. This gave the DA prior information about the family that could unfairly be used against the defendant.
Okay.
So Assistant DA Peter Strickland ended up taking over the case before it went to trial. At the time of the trial, Wanda was still employed at the nursing home and was working a second job at a restaurant in Siler City.
Wow.
Yeah, she was still there. She and Stewart were divorced by now, by the time it went to trial. And this had just, I mean, it had taken a toll on her. I mean, you know, she's got to feel like a lot of responsibility, even though there was nothing she could have done.
Right.
But, you know, that would weigh on you. Although, according to her mother, she was trying to spend time with her family and the kids in church. It was just becoming harder and harder for her to get through the day. And so 2 weeks before the trial, Wanda attempted suicide.
Oh, bless her heart.
Yeah. She took 60 prescription pills.
Oh.
I'm actually surprised she made it through that. 60 is a lot.
That's a lot.
But she was not successful. She was involuntarily committed to a psychiatric hospital. And the defense attorneys for Stewart, they pointed out, well, she was taking some of the same drugs as the defendant was at the time of the murders. So they kind of just pointed that out because, again, they're using those drugs as his defense about he didn't know what was going on.
Okay.
So they want to, you know, keep putting that idea out there that these drugs are making you not think clearly.
Okay.
Again.
And, I mean, there's some truth to that, to be 100% honest.
Yeah.
Especially if he drinks and stuff on top of all that.
Right. I mean, and it was mixed with alcohol.
Yeah.
So Robert Stewart's trial began on July 11th, 2011 with jury selection. And just choosing the jury took 2 weeks. By July the 26th, they actually still needed 3 more jurors. It was just taking that long to find somebody who could be impartial and didn't know them or, you know, didn't have any close ties. When they finally got their jurors and the opening arguments finally began, the prosecution did lay out that scene of a jealous, controlling, violent man seeking to kill his estranged wife if he couldn't have her. They brought witnesses to tell of his lack of self-control and of his alcohol abuse. They described a slew of notes that he had written in his stepdaughter's school notebook that alternated between, like, some of them were angry, some were just full of self-pity and despair. I mean, they were just kind of all over the place.
Was it the notes, like, saying what he was going to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Some where he was contemplating ending it all, and some even indicated that he was considering taking several people out along with him. One note was titled Last Will and Testament, and it was dated just 1 week prior to the shooting, and it had this statement in it. On April 9th, 1965, Robert E. Lee surrendered at Appomattox. On April 9th, I'm going to Appomattox to end it.
Weird.
Also in that, he suggested that he wanted Wanda to have his belongings, and he was going to leave those to her, and to his stepson, which I'm assuming Derek, he wanted him to have his firearms.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean, but why didn't he just do that?
I know. Yeah. Why take some people with you? But I wonder again, do those drugs make you have homicidal tendencies? I don't know. Him writing that, he was thinking that even when he wasn't taking the Ambien. Like,
right.
This wasn't an Ambien-fueled one-time rage. I mean, if he was writing this before, this sounds like it's premeditated to me.
Yeah.
And then he said there was a letter that he wrote to Wanda that was in that book. He hadn't sent it to her, in which he indicated that he thought she had left because of his prostate problems had caused him to be impotent.
Oh, gosh.
So he wrote, I hope my wife Wanda will understand I will not let them mess with my manhood. So remember we talked about the whole cancer thing? So
yeah.
I guess if you have surgery for prostate cancer, it can cause you to have erectile dysfunction.
Okay.
And so I guess he was worried about her leaving. And so he was telling her, He's got cancer, but maybe he's not going to let him do that surgery. If that's what she's worried about, he's not going to let him mess with his manhood. So
Oh, God.
I don't know. That's what I'm making of it. What do you make of it?
What a weirdo. I don't know.
Yeah. And then,
I doubt that's probably the last thing on her mind.
right. I know. Because I'm like, if you've been beating me up and stuff, the last thing I want to do is climb into bed with you.
Exactly.
Now, wait a minute. Let me back up and say this. Her daughter and her mother both said they did not know of him hitting her.
Okay.
But I'm going to say, I'm sorry, if you're drunk and you're violent and you have outbursts of temper, I would bet you anything he was hitting her.
If he pulled a gun on her,
Yes.
I mean, that's enough.
All of
right
those
there.
things are abusive, but I just don't think you're going to do all of those things and stop at not hitting.
Right.
I'm sure he did.
Oh, I'm sure.
But I did want to clear up there were 2 people who said they didn't have any knowledge of that actually happening. So in another note, he wrote that he didn't wish Wanda any ill will, and he understood. He indicated in those that he was thinking of just going out west to Yellowstone. He was just going to take off. Like, why didn't you just do that?
Yes.
And both the prosecution and the defense would use these rambling letters to support their sides of the case.
Okay.
So the prosecution, of course, they felt like it showed a pre-planned attack.
Right.
And I fully think it does. But his defense claimed that it showed his state of mind was not right during the attack and that he was in a lethal drug-induced stupor. They pointed out that he was under the influence of alcohol and prescription meds and therefore not legally responsible for his actions. And like I said, he had taken up to 12 times the recommended limit of that Ambien. This was interesting. On the Friday before the shooting, and the shooting was on a Sunday, he had gone to the doctor and said he was worried he would hurt himself or others.
Wow.
And at that time, he was given 2 antidepressants.
Ooh.
Now, I know those can't antidepressants cause
Yes.
homicidal feelings. So I hate that
Especially
kind
if he
of...
was taking a lot of other medicines with it.
Yeah, I hate that kind of slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, because it sounds like he was kind of crying out for help there.
Like, shouldn't they have involuntarily committed him when he said that?
Yes.
That might have protected all these people.
Right.
So
yeah.
I do think, I think that one slid through the cracks, and that with bad results.
Yeah.
They also brought expert medical witnesses to testify about his lifelong borderline personality disorder. So it just, this onion's got more layers. It just keeps...
Yeah.
Yeah. It comes down to the juror's decision. They have a hard decision to make. Well, to me, I don't think it's a hard decision, but on Saturday, September 3rd, they found Robert Stewart guilty of murder. However, he did not face the death penalty because they only found him guilty of second-degree murder, believing that he lacked the premeditation needed to convict on first-degree murder charges.
They probably used those letters to...
Well, and again, I try not to judge a jury because we don't know what evidence was that they got to hear.
Exactly.
And what they had. The only information I have comes from like newspaper sources,
Sure.
but they saw all of this stuff. So who knows? So,
Okay.
but that was their thing.
Okay.
Judge James Webb of Moore County sentenced the gunman to 141 to 177 years in prison.
Okay. So he'll die in prison.
Yes. So those were 8 sentences, and they were like all between 16 and 20 years each.
Okay.
So for each one. And families of the victims broke down in tears as the verdict was read, and as Stewart looked on, seemingly emotionless.
Gosh, what a...
When the judge went on to say that he would serve those sentences consecutively, they realized he wasn't getting out. That was definitely a life sentence, and he would not ever be released. And so some of the families even high-fived at that point.
Oh, good. I'm glad they were okay with the sentencing.
Yeah. 2 of the families actually brought a lawsuit against the nursing home in December of 2010. It alleged that the nursing home failed to protect its residents by not having locking front doors, like I guess the kind that automatically lock,
Yeah.
a surveillance system, or even a staff person at the front desk. Now,
Yeah.
that nursing home did have high ratings,
Okay.
but they did say in the recent months they had been having a staffing shortage. So
Okay.
that was probably the case there.
And you really don't know. I feel like stuff like, unfortunately, this was just really severe, but it's like stuff happens and then you react to those situations. As you just, like there was 9/11 and now we have all of the airport security.
Right. Well, I agree with you. And I'm sure that nursing home did take steps after that.
Sure.
Because, of course. But there was one other thing in that lawsuit.
Okay.
They alleged that the home should have known Stewart might attack his wife because reportedly Wanda had told employers that morning that he may come for her.
Oh, okay.
I could not find what happened with that lawsuit.
Okay.
I dug around for a while. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. I don't know what the end of that was. There may be some of our listeners who know.
Let us know.
Yeah, this is a local story. You may, if you're local, you may actually know somebody that was involved in this.
Yeah.
Or have a family member. If you know what happened with that lawsuit, feel free to go in our Facebook group and tell us. I would like to know.
Definitely.
You know, I don't like to just make it all about the murderer.
Sure.
And I don't like to forget about the victims. So I just want to tell you who those 7 victims were, the 8 victims were.
Yes.
I've already told you a little bit about Jerry Avent, the nurse. He was 39 years old. He did succumb to his injuries at the hospital and die. They said everybody at the nursing home just loved him. He must have been a stand-up guy, judging by his quick actions and trying to lock down the facility and protect his residents. His fiancée had this to say about Stewart. This is a quote. She said, "There is not enough punishment on the earth that could atone for what he took. Wow. He's not crazy. He's pure evil, a man without a conscience." Yeah. And they were supposed to be married just 5 months later.
Oh, that is so sad.
It really is. Then there was Tessie Garner, age 75. She was a retired poultry farmer.
Oh.
Yeah. She had 3 daughters. She had children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, which at 75, I thought, yeah. And she was known for sending out these consummate gift baskets at Christmas filled with all these like goodies and homemade things. We all know an elderly person like that from church or something. Like you can just, you know how that is.
Yes.
Yeah, so sweet. There was Bessie Hendrick. She was 78. Friends remembered her as having a loving nature and enjoying doing things for other people. She had 5 children, and in her younger years, she had run a beauty shop, sold insurance, and taught cosmetology classes in Greensboro. And then she had worked at Chatham Trades as a teacher for disabled adults later on. And in her later years, she suffered from several ailments, including Parkinson's disease.
Okay.
There was John Goldston. He was 78. He was remembered as a lifelong UNC Tar Heels fan. If you know, you know. He was from Chatham County and a member of Tyson Creek Baptist Church. His family was part of that lawsuit that I told you about toward the nursing home.
Yes.
Then there was Jesse Musser, 88. He had Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. He was blind and deaf and in a wheelchair. Isn't that so sad?
Heartbreaking.
And he had a shotgun wound to his back. All I can hope is that, you know, he didn't hear it, he didn't see it, and he didn't know it was coming. And it was quick.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking. Now, his wife also lived at the home. She had Alzheimer's, and so she might have been in that locked unit. Her family member said, and she didn't understand why they hadn't brought him to see her that day.
Oh.
Now, can you imagine having to explain that to her?
Sad.
And her family said they had to really grapple with telling her. And all I could think was they probably had to tell her over and over and over.
Yeah.
That he was gone. So that's tragic. Then there was Lillian Dunn. She was 89. She worked at a textile mill in Ramseur and raised 5 children. And her hobbies included quilting, cooking, and canning produce. Mm. There was Margaret Johnson, also aged 89. She was a previous resident of Chatham County and was described as just a wonderful woman and a great friend. She and her family had operated a small farm in Silk Hope before she moved to the nursing home. And at trial, there was actually expert testimony that she, and then the next lady I'm going to tell you about, Louise DeClure, there was expert testimony that said they could have actually been alive for up to 5 minutes after the shotgun blast. And then another 5 minutes after passing out from the blood loss. So up to 10 minutes that they, just laid there and suffered. And then Louise DeClure, 98. had only recently entered the nursing home after a stroke had left her unable to live independently. And she was described in the papers as a 5-foot spark plug.
Oh.
Isn't that cute? I love that. They said she was just very active, bowling, playing pool, dancing the polka, until that stroke had kind of slowed her down a little bit. But 98.
Wow.
That was the second family that was part of that lawsuit against the nursing home. So like I said earlier, I do feel like so many of our listeners will know like some of these families possibly because they're just all around Chatham County, Randolph County, Moore County. If you do, go to our Facebook group and leave your memories of them in the comments. We love to hear those. And I'm not sure, like, so my mother-in-law's from Robbins, the same area where that officer's from. And, her maiden name is Garner. She was a Garner.
Wow.
So I don't know if there's any family relation there. Her mom's family was also from there. I don't know if it's a different set of Garners. Around here in these counties, they'll say, oh, there's 2 sets of those families.
Yes.
I don't really know how all that plays out. So I mean to ask her when I get a chance if she knows of them. But if you know somebody in this story, we'd love to hear about it.
Definitely.
So this is where I wanted to point out too. If you think about the way I told the story, Stewart went through all 8 of those 8-stage patterns for people involved in a domestic homicide. He had a history of domestic abuse or stalking in previous relationships. Right. The romance develops quickly into a serious relationship. Again, he was 19, she was 17.
Sure.
They were married pretty quickly. It then becomes dominated by coercive control from the perpetrator. Several people testified he was controlling. Then a trigger threatens the perp's control, like a breakup or the woman leaves. And we know that happened. And then escalation. The threats and control intensify with stalking or threats or even threats of suicide. And again, we know he was calling her parents' house, calling the neighbors.
Yes.
So it was definitely escalating. And then the perpetrator has a change in thinking. They're going to move on either through revenge or homicide. And his note writing alone shows that.
Oh, yeah.
And then planning. The perpetrator buys weapons or makes plans to get the victim alone. He already had a lot of weapons. Again, this was that whole good old boy setting.
Right.
He had hunting guns and all kinds of guns, I'm sure.
Yeah, but calling the parents and Wanda over to his house.
Yes. You know there was something behind that.
Of course.
Yeah. So there was some planning going on. And then the actual homicide takes place. And he would have killed Wanda had he been able to get to her.
Sure.
And sometimes that involves hurting others, and such as their children. But in this case, it was these elderly residents of this nursing home. Unfortunately, that pattern proved to be very accurate for him. So just to finish up, I'll tell you where these people are today. Officer Justin Garner, as of 2019, he was a master trooper for the North Carolina Highway Patrol.
Oh, cool.
He moved on to other law enforcement. I did look up Wanda on social media.
Sure.
I messaged her to see if she would want to talk, but I didn't get a reply.
Okay.
So either she didn't get the message or she didn't.
Sure.
Yeah. Robert Stewart himself, he is currently incarcerated at Noose Correctional Institution in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Since being locked up, he has had 11 infractions. His last one was August 8th of this year.
Okay.
Just weeks ago. For, what do you think?
Drinking, drugs.
Fighting.
Fighting, okay. He's old now. Sheesh.
I know.
Well, I don't know.
He's 61.
For some reason, I was thinking he would have been in his 60s then, but he was born in the 60s.
Yes, 63.
Okay.
That's right. So most of his infractions were for fighting or possessing a weapon.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, his personality probably still hasn't changed.
I have never understood why take other people out with you. Innocent people. Like, what makes you think I just want to murder other people before
innocent people that I don't know. They have never done anything to me.
I just don't understand. It's just,
I don't either.
It's a logic. I don't know. Or a lack of logic. I can't figure out what possesses. Well, yeah, something just possesses them, I think.
Yeah, it has to be because I can't figure out, like you said, I don't really know of any other thing it could be. Or maybe like Jill DeGarmo said, when, Jerry Avent's fiance, like, it's just pure evil. Like,
yeah.
There's no other thing that can explain that.
No.
And to this day, this is still known as North Carolina's deadliest mass shooting.
Wow. Ugh, those were some hard times.
They sure were.
Now, the article that I read in the beginning of the episode was originally worded to imply that it was referring to men killing women. But for sake of political correctness, I made it gender neutral. Or is it non-binary? Either way, it's a proven fact that nobody, male or female, has ever been murdered by their spouse while they were listening to hard times and true crimes. So you make sure you tell everybody you know, and a few people you don't, to check us out. It just may save their life. Till next time, goodbye.